So I just wanted to give, the basic idea. And we're going to talk about this in a little more detail about the key terms. But, we have the source farm, and that's where the replication, the content is going to come from, or the target destination, where you want to synchronize to. Now, the funny thing about this, and definitely why we're going to go into the key terms, is that these terms could be reversed. If you're if this was United States to London, and you're in the United States, you'd call it the source and then the target. But if it's two directions, bidirectional, and you're in London and you're going to the United States, you'd call it the source. So those are one of those funny things. You have to have the context of where you're looking at it to be able to know what all this replication synchronization language is talking about. So we'll go into more detail about this. And certainly here you can see this is the bare bones two-farm setup that replication excels at. It also could be two web applications within the same farm that you'll see in day 2 for the intranet, extranet scenario. So this is the basic. Let's go into a little more detail, and actually I'm not going to do that right now because, look at this. This is complicated. These are all of the things that are going on and being utilized throughout the replication process, and that's what we're going to build on. Today we're doing an introduction, then we'll talk a little bit more in day 2, and 3 and 4 we'll get into more and more detail about these different pieces that will enable you to have confidence and comfort when you are looking at the queue and knowing where the source and destination packages are coming and going from and their health. So I won't actually talk about this too much today, but you will see this reoccurring image throughout our process. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Pat, who's going to go into more detail about the key terms and all of the different items that you've seen represented in that graph. Pat, take it away.
All right. Guys, just let me know if you can hear me all right. Adam, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm just going to start off talking about some of the Windows software components that are in use under the covers with Replicator. Really, there's a whole bunch, and I won't read each one of these to you. One of the ones that is important that you want to know about is the background intelligent transfer service. This service is part of Windows, part of the Windows operating system. If you've ever updated your Windows operating system, you've used bits to do that. It's what actually downloads those packages. The reason that we leverage it is because it is an interruptible method of transferring files. So if something happens with your network, lose connection completely, then it'll pick up where it left off. So we actually leverage that technology to transfer back and forth the packages that we create whenever we're capturing events and sending them back and forth from source to destination. Okay, so let's go now to some of the other software components. So one of the things that we need to talk about is we all know that SharePoint has its own set of databases under the covers. Replicator creates a set of sister databases for each of those. Oops, sorry, I need to advance the slide here. Replicator creates a set of sister databases for each of these because that's where we capture our events. When we say we're event-based, we are capturing at that level. We don't capture through the GUI. At this time, we're capturing what's happening in the background, and we store those in sister databases. And we'll see much more of those later on. Okay. Now let me go to the next slide. Okay. Now, one thing that can be a little bit confusing is defining what the replicator engine itself is. Whenever we do an install, the engine, whenever we say engine, it's made up of several components. There's the Windows service, and that service has a transport service and just a replicator service. And that replicator service is what's responsible for doing all the processing. It looks in the databases for new events. It packages up events, it sends notification. Everything that is required to do the actual processing of what we captured is done in that engine. So the replicator, the transport, the engine tells then our transport service that, okay, I've got this package, here it is, ready to go. Notify the other side, then let's get the transfer done. Okay. We also have a web service, and that's how we communicate back and forth between farms, as we use our web service to progress packages and to notify the other side of what's going on. Okay. And of course, whenever you install, we do have our object model, and we will kind of see where that gets placed whenever we do the install. Let's go to next slide. Okay. A couple other things that you need to be aware of are the import working directory and the export working directory. These are the directories where we put packages. So Replicator is all about capturing an event, packaging that up, notifying the other side, and then the other side, gets the notification, downloads the package, applies the package. Well, you need somewhere to put all of those interim packages, and that's where the import working directory and the export working directory come into play. Depending on the direction is where the package gets put for temporarily until the download's complete. Okay. Now, the Replicator configuration database, that's one of our databases that keeps track of all of your configuration that we'll see some of today. But any of the configuration that you do through the Replicator interface, this is where it's stored, as well as the monitor page. All the queue items are also in our configuration database. All right, so next set of terms. And this can cause a little bit of confusion. There's a queue item and a connection, the event, the package, and these all make up basically the payload that's going over. The package is the container, so the replication package is the container for all of the events that we're sending over for that particular package. And in that package, for every connection, there's a queue item. So it goes in kind of a hierarchy. The package contains all the events, and then those events are packaged up into a queue item for each connection. Okay? And we'll see, we're definitely going to go into a lot more detail on this. And we're also going to talk about replication mode. We do have two modes, one being direct, which is your typical point-to-point, and then adaptive, which is kind of a mesh technology that we have. Okay. So let's go back to our review. All right, so that's basically some of the components that are listed in this diagram. I know we went over them quickly, but we're going to cover these in very much detail in the coming classes in the coming weeks. So if there's any questions at this point, I'm more than welcome to ask them. Otherwise, we'll continue on to the next set of slides. Okay, I think we're good.